She laughed at my promise ring and said, "This isn't high school." So I proposed 2 years later with her dream ring, right in front of her, but to someone else. I was 30 when Michelle and I stepped off the rattling freight elevator onto the roof of Ariadne, the boutique hotel she'd helped design during her internship. The sunset painted the skyline peach and copper, and a string-light canopy flickered on above us. The maitre d' placed us at her favorite corner table, the one that let her critique the furniture arrangement while pretending not to pose for photos. We'd met at a networking mixer. She was vetting fabric swatches for a co-working space. I was pitching a beta app nobody had heard of, and our banter over watered-down sangria morphed into long drives through the city, pointing out buildings she'd love to redesign and garages I fantasized about converting into office space. Michelle, 28 and effortlessly stylish, adjusted her linen blazer and started describing a client who wanted Scandinavian calm with Moroccan energy in his condo. I half listened, because nerves were thrumming in my ears. For the last 8 months, I'd eaten instant noodles, sold and used camera gear, and skipped birthday weekends so I could save for the modest promise ring burning a hole in my pocket. My tech startup, really just 3 laptops in my living room, wasn't profitable yet, but I believed in the long game. I thought she did too. After all, we'd spent lazy Sunday mornings sketching nursery layouts and debating baby names like they were UI elements. Dinner was amazing, charred octopus for her, mushroom risotto for me, but I hardly tasted it. When dessert arrived, a single molten chocolate cake, I drew a quiet breath, slid a small navy box onto the table, and opened it. "Michelle," I began, voice steadier than my heartbeat. "This is a promise that the real ring will come. But tonight, I want you to know I'm committed to our future." She leaned in, eyes glinting under the fairy lights, and for a heartbeat, I thought I'd nailed the moment. Then she laughed. Not a giggle, not a joyful squeal, an honest laugh, sharp enough to bounce off the glass railing. "A promise ring?" she said, brushing a manicured thumb across the simple gold band. "What is this, high school?" The words sliced through the warm night air. She went on before I could respond, recounting how a coworker had just scored a 6-carat showstopper, and how there was no way she could flash this tiny thing around her friends without looking pathetic. I closed the box. The lid made a soft click that somehow sounded louder than her laughter. I signaled the waiter, covered the check, more than I could comfortably afford, and walked her to my car. The drive to her apartment was silent except for the city traffic. When we reached her building, she opened the door, realized I wasn't following, and gave a small, puzzled wave goodnight. I watched her disappear into the lobby's marble glow, then rested my forehead on the steering wheel. That night, alone in my studio apartment surrounded by whiteboards scribbled with product-market fit hypotheses, I faced a truth I hadn't wanted to see. Michelle loved the idea of us, the polished, Instagram-ready version, not the reality that required patience and shared sacrifice. She cared more about impressing acquaintances than about building something real. I didn't beg or bargain. 3 weeks later, after a final polite coffee, we ended it. No shouting. No, we can still be friends. Just deleted photos, returned sweaters, and one muted Instagram handle. The promise ring went into a desk drawer next to unused prototype parts. For the first time in 2 years, my calendar and my future felt both terrifying and wide open. After Michelle and I ended things, I didn't have the luxury to dwell. Heartbreak is a loud visitor, but it quiets when your rent is due, your code base is buggy, and your bank balance has 3 digits left. I buried myself in work, not to prove anything, not even to cope, just to keep going. My startup, which once felt like a dream scribbled on post-it notes, started evolving. I found 2 contract developers on Reddit, brought in a freelance designer, and began landing small clients, nonprofits, niche retailers, anyone willing to take a chance on a scrappy product with solid UX. I took night shifts doing app testing for extra income. It was all grind, no glamour. But slowly, I could breathe again. It was at a local social impact panel that I first noticed Leah. She wasn't flashy. A navy cardigan, well-worn notebook, and a quiet confidence. She asked a speaker a thoughtful question about donor engagement and followed up afterward with a LinkedIn connection. I introduced myself in line for coffee. She smiled and said she'd already used my startup's donation tracking app for one of her nonprofit clients. We talked about funding transparency, favorite neighborhood bakeries, and somehow ended up walking 4 blocks out of our way just to keep the conversation going. Our first real date was at a used book fair. We picked out titles for each other without peeking and read over pastries on a park bench. No pretense, no pressure, just warmth. I didn't feel the need to curate myself, the way I had with Michelle. With Leah, the silence was comfortable. Over the next few months, she became part of my everyday, slowly, gently. She'd stop by after meetings with hummus wraps and ideas for pitch decks. She helped me prepare for investor, even drawing diagrams on sticky notes when I panicked about user metrics. Leah wasn't just present. She was invested. In me, in the version of success that didn't depend on a carrot count or Instagram-worthy vacations. She never asked about salaries or milestones. She asked if I'd eaten or if I was sleeping enough. That was new for me. For our first anniversary, I got her a small vintage ring from a downtown antique shop. It had a rose gold band and a tiny emerald centerpiece. I was nervous giving it to her. Old reflexes die hard. But she held it up to the light, smiled like it was the Hope Diamond, and whispered, "It's perfect. And it's you." That sentence still echoes in the best part of my mind. I knew then. She was the one. 2 years had passed since that rooftop dinner with Michelle. My company had just secured a sizable funding round, and the app was being used by a handful of mid-sized nonprofits across the state. Things felt stable, maybe even good. So I took a leap I'd been quietly planning for months. Leah once told me how much she loved her late grandmother's sapphire brooch, and how blue stones reminded her of childhood stories and family dinners. I found a local jeweler who specialized in custom work. Together, we designed an engagement ring, a deep sapphire center surrounded by 2 small diamonds, set in a band etched with a subtle vine pattern, just like the illustrations in her favorite childhood book. I hadn't thought about Michelle in a long time. That is, until I got an email about an upcoming Founders Night hosted by a well-known downtown restaurant, the same rooftop venue from 2 years ago. They were spotlighting emerging entrepreneurs, and I was being honored as one of the keynote attendees. I scanned the email, curious, and nearly dropped my phone when I saw the name of the event partner listed, Michelle L. Designs. Apparently, she'd landed corporate design contracts and was helping coordinate the event layout. I sat there for a moment, heart strangely still, not from anger or anticipation, but something else. Not revenge, not pettiness, just clarity. Whatever was going to happen next wasn't for show. It was for us. The night of the event arrived with that same golden haze the city wears when it's trying to impress. Leah wore a soft green dress with a low back and minimal jewelry, just the vintage ring I'd given her a year ago. It still caught light in the kindest ways. I wore a navy blazer, freshly dry cleaned, and tried not to overthink. The rooftop looked different this time. Warmer, less intimidating. The same string lights hung overhead, but they didn't feel like a spotlight anymore. Maybe it was because I wasn't here to prove anything. I was just here, with her. Michelle was across the venue. Near a table arrangement, she was directing someone to adjust by exactly 2 inches. She hadn't seen me yet, and I didn't linger. I didn't need to. I introduced Leah to a few of the other founders and investors. She held her own with quiet curiosity and thoughtful questions, just like she always did. At some point during the evening, the host clinked a glass and called attention to the small crowd. Tonight, we're honoring some of the city's rising entrepreneurs. People who've bet on themselves, who built something when nothing was guaranteed. I was one of them. I gave a short speech. Nothing flashy, just a few honest words about grit, failure, and community. I thanked my team, my early clients, and Leah. "You believed in this before it made sense on paper," I said. She gave my hand the lightest squeeze, and I felt the last of my nerves settle. Then, the quartet began playing something soft and familiar. I turned to her under the canopy of warm light and reached into my pocket. Not for a promise ring this time, but for the custom sapphire piece she didn't know existed yet. I didn't kneel dramatically or announce anything to the room. I just held the box open between us and asked, quietly, "Will you marry me?" Leah's eyes filled, but she didn't break into theatrics. She smiled, held my face, and said, "Of course I will." There was applause around us, clapping from strangers, colleagues, and some of the staff. I caught a few phones raised, but I barely noticed. What I did notice was a stillness to my left. Michelle stood about 15 feet away, half turned toward us, holding a half-full glass of white wine she hadn't yet raised to her lips. Her expression wasn't angry. It wasn't even shocked, really. Just quiet. Still, she glanced at the ring on Leah's hand, a deep sapphire glowing under the fairy lights, and lingered there longer than I expected. No words were exchanged. No dramatic exit, no scene. After a few moments, she simply lowered her gaze, turned, and walked off toward the elevator, her heels clicking softly against the rooftop floor. Leah didn't see her. Or if she did, she didn't say anything. She was too busy wiping her eyes and laughing under her breath, calling me a sneaky planner for hiding the whole thing. "We're getting married next spring, in a botanical garden just outside the city." She picked the venue. I picked the date, exactly 2 years to the day after that first vintage ring. Sometimes, I think back to that rooftop dinner with Michelle. The laughter, the sting, the silence on the way home. Not with resentment anymore, just with perspective. That night didn't break me. It showed me what I could live without. This night, though, It showed me what I'd been waiting for all along. What do you think? Was it fate, timing, or just learning the hard way what really matters? I appreciate you watching till the end. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more content.